The City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division and Department of Arts and Culture proudly present Take Another Look. Built on the foundation of two city ordinances, Art in Municipal Places, and the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division provides funds to artists to create art for the public, as well as arts organizations for arts and cultural programming. Join us as we discuss everything related to funding artists in the public realm with host Joni Palmer.
Hello, I'm Joni Palmer, and welcome back to Take Another Look at Albuquerque's public art. Thank you for tuning in today for the last in this set of 3 episodes about the city's Urban Enhancement Trust Fund. Today we will be talking about the what, why, and how of being on one of the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division's advisory boards. During the last 2 episodes, I have mentioned the UETF board, and in previous episodes, I have talked about the Public Art Program's Art Board. In fact, I spoke with Dorothy Sturmer, who represents District 9 on the Arts Board. I spoke with her back in November of 2023, episode number 4, about the increase to 1.5% for the arts. So today, we are going to speak with a member from each of these boards, UETF and the Arts Board. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my 2 guests. So Julia Youngs represents District 2 on the UETF board and is the current chair. We'll be talking about that. What does that mean? Her life's work is at the intersection of people and place with a vision for thriving, equitable, creative communities for all. She currently resides in Albuquerque and serves as a program manager for Microsoft's Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact program via Alethi Management Consulting. In this role, she supports the Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact team to connect impact-driven entrepreneurs with the resources they need to succeed in tackling pressing global problems. In all of her work, she is committed to supporting equitable and responsive programming that grows alongside communities. Outside of her professional work, Julia is a doctoral candidate at Oxford University in their Sustainable Urban Development program. Outside of academia, she has worked for many years in Albuquerque as a stage manager, previously with Fusion Theater Company and the National Institute of Flamenco. She has worked for many years as an arts organizer with organizations like Emerge ABQ and Umbrella Week, and she is on the board of the Downtown Arts and Cultural District. You're doing a lot. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Dr. Bernadine Hernández is an at-large member of the Arts Board and the former chair. She's an associate professor in the Department of English at the University of New Mexico. She specializes in transnational feminism and sexual economies of the U.S.-Mexico borderlands, along with American literary studies and empire, border and migration history, and Chicana, Latina literature and sexualities. Her book, is this recently published?
2022.
2022, yeah, is from UNC Press, is titled Border Bodies, Racialized Sexuality, Sexual Capital, and Violence in the 19th Century Borderlands. And it's the first book-length study that focuses on sexual capital and gender and sexual violence in the borderlands in the 19th and early 20th centuries. And this was based on recovered archival work.
Yes.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I want to read that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you know a little bit about my guests. Now, let me say a little bit about the boards before we talk about being on a board, the experience of it. So one of the reasons we wanted to host an episode about these 2 boards is because there are a number of open positions on the city's boards and commissions, and some are pretty long-standing vacancies. On the 14th of February of this year, City Desk Albuquerque published a piece titled Council Proposes Fix to Perpetually Empty Boards and Commissions. According to this article, quote, the city has around 82 boards and commissions, but only 58 are active, with around 400 members and a nearly 15% vacancy rate. That was really surprising to me. City boards are important because they provide an important avenue for citizen input, providing advice as well as oversight on specific areas of local governance. That is, they advise elected officials and city staff on a wide range of issues. Both the Arts Board and the UETF Board are volunteer boards, and both have 11 members, 9 members representing each city council district, and 2 at-large members appointed by the mayor with confirmation by city council. The central objective of the Arts Board is, according to the website, to promote and encourage private and public programs to further the development and public awareness of and interest in the visual arts and fine crafts and cultural properties. This board is mandated by the Art and Municipal Places Ordinance, and each of the members serve a staggered 3-year term. The central objective of the UETF board is, quote, to enhance and enrich the culture of the city. The board is responsible for establishing the evaluation criteria for funding applications and carrying out the review process. Board members serve up to 2 consecutive 3-year terms. All right, so that's a little bit about the 2 boards that you serve on. So I'm going to start with you, Bernadine. How did you come to serve on the board?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am from the South Valley of Albuquerque, and I've been organizing with the South Valley for about 16 years now. And we did an event where we were organizing against art gentrification in the South Valley. And this was a pretty big deal for South Valley residents because art studios, artists were coming into the South Valley and potentially raising taxes, and people in the South Valley were going to be dispossessed in a certain type of way. And so I've been organizing in terms of arts and culture for about 16 years, and I saw that there was an opening in the Arts Board. This was right after all of the stuff that had happened with the Oñate statue at the Albuquerque Museum. And I was invited to do one of the talkback sessions for the Oñate statue, and I realized that it wasn't quite what I wanted to get out of that talkback session. It was more of a healing session, and not necessarily we weren't able to give our feedback of what was going to be happening with the Oñate statue. So I decided that if I wanted to talk back and if I wanted to get my voice heard, that I should become part of the board. And so there wasn't a vacancy in my district, but there was a vacancy at an at-large member, and so I filled out the application and was approved by the mayor and the city council I think maybe 2 months after that. And then I've been on the board ever since, and I been the chair for 2 consecutive terms.
Okay, and was the application, was it difficult? I mean, I'm just thinking about people who are listening, like they're thinking, do I have to write essays like I did for college and, things like that?
No, it wasn't difficult at all. Why do you want to be on this board? Why does it matter to you? And I think that if you're really invested in the board that you are applying for, you're not going to have a problem, putting why you want to be on that board and why you're invested in it. And I think being a longstanding organizer in the arts really helped me find the language to be able to answer the question. It was not like an essay. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a really short question and a short application. And I think that anyone that is interested in having their voice heard on one of these boards should apply. Okay,
great. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you the same questions, Julie. So how did you come to serve on the UETF board?
Yeah, well, like most millennials, I heard about it on Instagram. So it was a number of years ago now. I had a friend who used to work in public art, and there was a vacancy, and she had just shared a post about it on Instagram, and I thought, wow, I've never heard of this. This looks really cool and interesting. My background is in a variety of different things, but academically, it's in urban planning. Professionally, it's in entrepreneurship and startups, and personally, it's in the arts. I've worked as a professional stage manager, and so I thought, UETF seems like a really perfect fit, right? It's about the intersection of arts and the community and public space. And as somebody who's worked in arts nonprofits for most of my professional life, I've seen the importance and the impact of local funding. I've also seen, the challenges of getting that type of funding. And so I was really interested in being involved in something that was about both the process of how do we better serve our community, but also the outcomes of what are the really cool things that are happening in our community and how can I better support. So it's been a number of years now that I've been on the UETF board. It was definitely pre-COVID. I forget exactly when I first started, but it is a continual delight.
And the application was it
Fairly
Simple,
straightforward. Yeah, if I
straightforward?
remember, it was fairly straightforward. I think, Bernadine, you raise a really important point about why you want to join or connect with a particular board. I think as somebody who really enjoys volunteering, when I saw all the ones on the city website, I was like, oh, there's lots of places I could get involved.
Right.
But I think there is an important rule that you can only serve on one board at a time, which is
Yes.
good. And also, it's about where you're best positioned to serve and to help. And so I just really connected with the mission. And the application was pretty straightforward. And I think it was confirmed relatively quickly within a couple months after.
Right, right. Well, you both mentioned, so you're chair of UETF board, and you are former chair?
Yeah, my term ended last month.
Oh, okay. So what does it mean to be the chair of, you're the current chair, and what does it mean to go from chair to just a regular member? So whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm newly confirmed as chair. I've been on the committee for a while, as I said. And I think, honestly, I'm really lucky because my fellow committee members make it really easy. I think, can speak for everyone on the committee. We kind of enjoy working together. We do a lot of work together, and I think we enjoy it. And we don't get to meet in person as much as we would like, but it makes my work really easy as the chair. And I think my responsibility, having learned from so many amazing people who have been in this role previously, is to just be a good steward to the committee, but also be a good intermediary between the committee and the community, and to be really clear and responsive to our community and to our values as a committee and to the ordinance. And so, I feel really lucky that it's not, particularly bureaucratic or difficult, or, we're not fighting each other. Like, we really enjoy the work and we're all really passionate about it. And that makes the job a lot easier.
Yeah, the chemistry of boards is so important.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean you always get along, right?
Right,
but,
right.
Staying really clear, I think, on the mission and the values makes it a lot easier.
Right. Because you're all there because you love whatever that board is all about.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And how about you? You went from being chair to being a regular old board member. So how have your roles and responsibilities changed?
So I haven't been to a meeting yet where I'm not the chair. So I'm sure that it'll be a lot different once we meet next month. But my responsibilities as the chair for the last 2 terms have been really interesting, particularly because of the Oñate statute. We were redoing all of our DEIA ordinances on the board, and so I was able to be a part of thinking through what does it mean to decommission a work, what does it mean to be culturally sensitive to the community, what does it mean to listen to the community that is so divided, what does it mean to do the type of work that really kind of looks at systemic race issues within the city. And so we were doing a lot of heavy-handed work, I think, in the past two terms that I've been chair. And so I think that we addressed a lot of those things in rewriting all of the kind of mission statement and ordinances and stuff that we went through in terms of the DEI stuff. And now that I'm a regular board member, I think that we will continue that same mission. And I think now we're focused on a lot of large projects like the airport project, like, a lot of large things that are happening in public art. And so that really excites me as well.
Cool. So let's talk about what a board meeting is like. And so as, and one of the notes I have in my script is to talk a little bit about the Public Meetings Act and Robert's rules, because I think that's something that when I first started serving on boards, I knew nothing about. But first, let's start with how much time do you put in monthly? Is this, we all know volunteer work is volunteer work. So how much time do you put in? And then also, what kinds of things are you doing on a monthly basis?
So as the previous chair, I had to meet with the head of, arts and culture and get the agenda put together and, just kind of go over what we were going to be doing at the board meeting. So that was, it would be sometimes an hour, mostly 30 minutes. And so it doesn't take up a large amount of time. And I think that it really is worth it at the end of the day. And then once we meet, it's a 2-hour meeting, and that is really a 2-hour meeting. It never goes, early. And so I think, it's about I would say, about 2.5 hours a month to serve as chair, but also we get to be on other subcommittees.
Okay.
And so we get to, pick Dia de los Muertos art pieces. We get to pick, the students' art program, art pieces from students that have been doing art in their schools. And so all of those subcommittees, I'd say, would be around another 5 to 6 hours a month. And so, nothing more than 10 hours a month. And I think that it really is all worth it.
Great. Yeah. There is it definitely, board meetings, when I'm the chair of a board, and it is kind of akin to my teaching, okay, we've got class, it starts at 1. I'm not letting you out early. We've got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So how about you?
Yeah, so UETF, I would say, can be a very busy board and committee, because we are essentially a funding mechanism, right, for arts and cultural projects in the city. We often are kind of wax and wane in terms of engagement. Right now, we are in the middle of our application review cycle. So organizations applied for UETF funding, and so we're in the regular review cycle, which is slightly different than something like the Resiliency Residency Program. So when we're in the thick of it, it can be anywhere from, right now is probably 5 to 8 hours a week reviewing applications, right? We get a lot of applications for funding, especially for the Resiliency Residency. So it is a busy board and committee. And we've done a lot of work outside of that. We are, and this, I have lots of thoughts on the Roberts Rules when we get to that. But we do a lot of really intensive work on the application process. So it's never just copy paste, we did this last year, just send it out. We review the rubric, the criteria, the application process every single year. Every funding cycle. And so that takes up a lot of time. We go line by line through things. We talk through things. We have subcommittees about the process and outreach and the questions we're asking. So it can be a really busy board, but reviewing the projects are just so incredibly rewarding and exciting.
Yeah, to get a pulse, right?
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Find out what are artists doing out there right now, and what are they thinking about, and those sorts of things. Now, you do similar work in terms of selecting artists, and so there must be some really busy times of year for you as well.
Definitely is busy times of year. I think we do a really good job of everyone takes responsibility for certain things. And so not one person is always in all of the subcommittees or doing all of the reading of applications. I think that the Sunport Committee was really, really busy. There was over 300 applications or something like that.
Which is great to hear, right?
I was not on that subcommittee, so I thank my colleagues for taking that over. But most of them are fairly, they go by fairly quickly because we have about 20 to 50 applicants, and we all share the responsibility of looking through those different competitions. We also have when people solicit proposals on their own, and it's not necessarily a call for artists. And so we have to go through all of those as well. And so there's all of the different committees that make the machine work. And so it's just really, it doesn't seem like a lot of work on our end.
Right. But that's when you have really good chemistry on a board, you can do so much great stuff. Well, and talking about that chemistry, Robert's Rules. So are you required to follow those at your board meetings? It's part of the Public Meetings Act, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And how do you use it? I mean, I mentioned this I teach in the planning department at UNM, and I mentioned Robert's Rules to my students, and one of my students said, well, who's Robert? And I was like, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But I can tell you about Robert's Rules and why they're important. So either one of you, since you've both been chair.
So I was thinking about this question before we came here, because I was like, what do I have to say about Robert's Rules, and why does it matter? And I think the importance of Robert's Rules are not necessarily just about the document or the process itself, but it's really about a bigger conversation of how, when you are on a board or committee, do you keep yourselves in check? How do you give yourselves guide rails? And that's something that we've thought a lot about at UETF. Just to give a little historical context, when I joined the committee, there were a lot of other new folks at the time, and I have to give a lot of credit to those folks, Gabriel Ubayez, Madalena Salazar, Stanley Allen, Andrew Littman. These are folks who have really helped shape this process that I'm going to talk about. But when I joined, we were very curious about how the previous committees had funded things, how they had made decisions? What had they funded? Because UETF's been around for quite a long time. And it's a very malleable board in terms of process. We don't necessarily have an application that we use every time or a rubric. And we saw over looking at past applications at that particular moment in time that funding had really varied a lot. You know, it had been at some points in time, committees in the past would fund organizations kind of just because they just really liked that particular discipline over another. So, you know, for example, ballet got funded a lot. This is just me making it up, you know, because the committee just really liked it and they didn't fund other things because they didn't really like it. Or they funded organizations that had been funded a lot and had a really big impact, and they were reticent around new organizations. And we as a committee felt like, number one, that sort of malleable process is good, but it doesn't always engender the most equitable outcomes. And number two, it's not really defensible as a methodology for the public. You know, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, why didn't I get funded? We can't say, well, we just didn't really like your project, you know? Like, we need something more rigorous.
Right.
And so that's why we've worked really hard in terms of the application process, the rubric, changing the ordinance to better enshrine diversity. And all of it really has to go back to what we're talking about with Robert's Rules, which is how do you as a committee keep guide rails on yourselves? How do you keep yourselves in check? Who is keeping you accountable when you're in decision-making positions? So I think Robert's Rules is just one example of that, right? It's very structured in terms of the actual meeting and sort of conduct, but it speaks to these bigger issues.
Yeah. How about you?
That's a great answer. I'm going to stay with that.
Yeah, I find that they are the guardrails, and they do keep us, and it also helps you move through the meeting in a very predictable way.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of other unpredictability, right?
We have sometimes a lot of public comment, and so people that are coming in to ask, why are we thinking about decommissioning a certain piece, or why are we, not funding X, Y, and Z, or why don't we, like a lot of why questions. And I think Robert Rules of Order really helps us maintain some sort of semblance of cohesiveness on the board, because if not, it would just become a circular argument, or a circular why don't you do this kind of stuff. And we give them a start time, we give them an end time, we allow each other to talk and to ask questions about why this certain comment or something is coming up. And so I think that the Robert's Rules of Order really helps us kind of guide ourselves through those really difficult conversations.
And if, to our listeners, there is a really great cheat sheet on Robert's Rules on the city's city clerk's website, and I have that right here with me, and I keep it with me at my board meetings just to remind me sometimes of certain protocols, right? You also mentioned, institutional memory, right? And so is that something in terms of meeting minutes and all of those sorts of things? Do you feel like you have good institutional memory on your board?
I think so. I think we do. There's a lot of us who have been on the committee for various reasons for a long period of time. And I think, the Sherry and the whole public art staff are so incredible. Mandolin and Eric and Madrone, they really keep us accountable to what we've said previously, what we've agreed on, what we've decided not to do. But it's UETF's been around for 40 some years, so it's a lot of institutional memory, and we're really trying to make sure that we keep things really clear and accountable so that we don't fall into that pattern of just kind of things being decided by whim or kind of personal preference, and really trying to be clear about where we've come from and where we're trying to go together.
Yeah. How about you all?
Yeah, I mean, I am a scholar, and so I do a lot of archival research. And so I'm writing a paper about the Oñate situation. And Sherry was able to gather all of the documents back to the early 90s when the Oñate statue was just a thought. And so there's just so much institutional memory in terms of the archives that the city of Albuquerque has. Everything is documented. It may not necessarily be all together in the way that we want it to be, right? But it's there, and you just have to kind of dig around and do the work to be able to find all that institutional memory. And so I think the office does a really good job of documenting things and keeping them, on the drive and having them accessible for people that need them as well.
Right. Because it is so important to know how things have been done in the past so you can build on them, right? So tell me a little bit about, some of the, what what is the biggest kind of success or most enjoyable thing that you have been a part of on your board?
I think I maybe can speak for a lot of us on the board that one of the things that we're really, really proud of is the resiliency residency. So, our UETF funds nonprofit organizations, not individual projects necessarily. And when COVID hit, we of course saw how deeply impacted our arts community was, our arts nonprofits generally, but also individual performers and artists. And that makes up such an important part of New Mexico's economy and Albuquerque's economy. And so we really, we came to the city and to Sherry and the whole staff and said, how do we do something right now in a moment of crisis? It's not our usual review cycle, but how do we mobilize and be responsive? And the staff was absolutely incredible in being responsive and malleable and giving a lot of time and energy.
That's great.
To work with us to figure out how do we get money in the hands of artists who really need it. And so the resiliency residency mobilized really quickly. It was hundreds of applications reviewed in a short time period. Right. We worked with nonprofit organizations who provided the sort of fiscal sponsorship for these entrepreneurs and who helped sort of be their landing place in a moment of crisis. And so I think it's something that we're really, really proud of. And we're always kind of pushing the staff to say, like, you need to go just talk up to everyone about this. We're so proud of it. And we're so honored that the staff was so responsive.
That's great.
Yeah. I would say that in my term on the arts board, that working with the local organizations has been really, really great. So like Harwood, Working Classroom, getting those types of community collaborations going has been something that I'm really, really proud of. Mm-hmm. I think that, Harwood does a really good job in the community in terms of working with youth and working with youth who, come from minoritarian populations, and Working Classroom, is such a fierce, they're just a fierce art organization and Bananas community, right, who are working with youth as well. And so I think that those types of collaborations have been really great to see. More immediately, I think that the Sunport artist selection has been really, really one of our biggest kind of like, yay kind of things that we've done, right? And we just approved the lowrider planes that are going to be going up in the Sunport.
So excited about that.
So I'm like, and we had so many questions like, are they going to actually like run? Can people like get in them? And they're like, no, we're just taking it step by step, right? Where it's just going to be like up in the Sunport. But I think that lowriders are so important to Albuquerque and New Mexico culture, and so to have that be one of the first, I think, is something that the Arts Board is really proud of.
Oh, that's great. So, and you said that that's kind of immediately what you're working on right now.
Right, yes.
So what are some current projects that are on your plates or in the pipeline?
For us at UETF, we're in the thick of application review, so it's it's the busiest time for us, but it's also the most exciting because we get to hear from incredible organizations. I think we have 80 to probably 100 applications this time around, and we get to hear from these amazing communities and organizations across Albuquerque. I love the application review cycle because every time I learn about new organizations and I learn something new about Albuquerque. Like I learn about a new community, a new part of our history, a new cultural challenge, or person that has changed the landscape. And it's just such a fun and informative process. It's a lot of work, but it is really the most exciting. It's also the most challenging because I think all of us just want to fund every project. They're so good. Right. They're all so good.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
It is. It really is. Yeah, it's a really a good challenge to have. Yeah.
Right.
So I think that the Sunport project is a really big project that we're working on right now, which is not only just the lowrider planes, but we're doing a mural out in the food court. We're installing all of the artists that we had picked originally for their art to be installed in the Sunport. We're also working really hard on the Route 66 anniversary project.
Right.
And so there's a virtual reality art project that is going up on Route 66. That is really exciting, and I don't necessarily understand all of how virtual reality works, but it seems really exciting right now.
Yeah.
And then just all of the collaborations that are happening. I think that Working Classroom is doing a collaboration with the city to think about an art piece that will go up at the Barelas Park, nice. So thinking about those community collaborations makes it really exciting as well.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's about how you collaborate, who you, and it's a learning experience, right? Being on the board.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve for sure.
Oh, I'm going to have to wrap things up. So are there any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
I would encourage people to find where the vacancies are and get involved. I think it's being on boards and committees in the city is a fantastic way to learn more about how the city functions, right? And to also learn more about these amazing community partners and just be more involved. Like, I really encourage people to apply. You need to have an interest and some type of sort of chops or awareness in that respective field.
Right.
But it also is really accessible. And so I think that that's something important to remind people of, that it's not super, buttoned up and bureaucratic, right? Like, it's for the community.
Right.
And so I encourage people to get involved.
Yeah, I would echo that and say that volunteer work is not necessarily extra work, right? It's work that we're passionate about and interested in, and it really helps the community in the end. And if that's something that you are interested in and concerned with, I really, really do, beg you to almost to become or to submit your application for the Arts Board.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining me in the studio today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, dear listeners, I hope this episode has given you some insights about the two boards, the UETF board and the Arts Board. The city's website provides more information about these boards, so you can learn about who all the various board members are. You can also learn a little bit more about their mission, their roles, responsibilities, and you can also learn a little bit about how to apply to be on those boards. So you can go to the city's website and search for UETF board. It's a long URL that I'm not going to try to work through. The same thing for the Arts Board. I encourage you to see what they're doing. Check out their minutes. You can attend any of their meetings. These are public meetings. So meeting dates and rooms for each of these boards are announced publicly. You can see the city's website. They have to publicize it 2 weeks in advance, and then they post their meeting notes. If you're thinking about joining a board, or even just want to see that long list of boards and commissions, go to the city clerk's website on the city website. So stay tuned for our next episode, where we're going to shift gears a little bit. So it'll be a surprise what we're going to start talking about next. All of these are always really interesting to talk to folks like you who are out there doing this work, volunteer work that is really helping our arts community. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, you can find all of this information. We'll have the links up there that I just mentioned in our newsletter, and you can sign up for the newsletter on the Public Art website. So thank you for listening. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, which will be released in April. We hope that after you've listened to this podcast, that you will take another look at Albuquerque's public art.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the Albuquerque Public Art Program, the Public Art Collection, opportunities for artists, and so much more, visit cabq.gov/publicart. To learn more about the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, visit cabq.gov/UETF. Tune in next time to take another look at the City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division.